I'm going fishing with Otto. I can't believe he said yes. He doesn't really fish a lot. He gets seasick. Going out with my high school friend Gabe. He's got a pretty sweet, fast boat.
She was the fierce, fearless fisherwoman who stole the spotlight in Alaska, the last frontier. But now, Jane Kilcher's life has taken a turn few saw coming. From icy waters to emotional crossroads, her story is no longer just about survival.
Looks good.
It's hot and delicious.
Your first burbot.
To the best ice fishing trip ever with the best lady ever.
Isn't it?
It's about transformation. What really happened to the woman who once braved the wild with grit and grace?
Sean! Ott! Hey, Ottley! Saw the rod chip bend down and wow, everything changes.
The answer is more unexpected, more human, and far more powerful than you might think. As whispers of heartache, reinvention, and resilience swirl through her recent chapters, one thing is clear. Jane's journey didn't end when the cameras stopped rolling. It just got real. Stay with us as we uncover the untold layers of a life that went deeper than anything shown on screen. From Anchorage to the Homestead. Born Christina Jane Furman, Jane spent her early years surrounded by the wild beauty and challenges of Alaska. Raised by her parents, Bob and Sarah Furman, she grew up in a household where self-reliance wasn't just encouraged, it was essential. Bob, originally from Texas, brought a gritty, outdoorsman's mindset to life in the North, passing on practical survival knowledge and a firm respect for nature. Jane and her siblings, Bobby and Jessica, were raised to appreciate the land's bounty while understanding its harshness. From a young age, Jane learned how to fish, explore, and problem-solve in environments where weather and wilderness shaped daily life. Her family's lifestyle created a foundation of adaptability and confidence that would later become trademarks of her personality. Although Homer was Jane's birthplace, her childhood wasn't confined to one location. The Furman family lived in several Alaskan communities before returning to Homer permanently when Jane was 12. This move proved formative, not just in geography, but in identity. Homer, with its panoramic mountain views and frigid coastal waters, demanded a different level of resourcefulness. It was a small town with big expectations, socially tight-knit, rugged in climate, and deeply rooted in local tradition. Here, Jane entered junior high, then high school, and gradually embedded herself into the rhythms of the community. Her return to Homer marked the beginning of a deeper awareness of what it meant to live close to the land, to weather both literal and figurative storms, and to embrace a lifestyle built more on necessity than convenience. As Jane grew up, she became ever more aware of the well-known Kilcher family, whose homestead lay not far from her own. They were an institution in Homer Well, known for their multi-generational commitment to subsistence living and their musical gift, both traits that made them shine all the more brightly in small-town life. Though at that point in time, Jane's life was not interwoven with theirs, the Kilchers had become part of the landscape she grew up in. The Kilchers, Bivets, were of more than mere curiosity. They were an imprint of Jane's yet unmanifest culture. Her eventual marriage into the clan was far in the future, but these first glimpses of their way of life created a kind of unspoken familiarity, a sort of preview of the world she would one day enter. By the time she graduated from high school, Jane was a competent and independent young woman well prepared for the rigors of frontier living. Her parents' values and the realities of being raised in a remote and often hostile environment prepared her for a life of hard work and dogged perseverance. Her early years in Homer etched into her emotional toughness, social intuition, and survival instinct. Whether it was on the slippery roads or in the realm of small-town politics, Jane was beginning to carve out an identity that would later resonate with viewers of Alaska. The last frontier. Long before she took on the name of the Kilchers, Jane was already living a life in tune with theirs. One that finds its roots in nature. One that has been defined by strength and one that has been shaped by the land itself. But before Jane would trade ocean storms for mountain snow, her life at sea would forge a strength few could match, and prepare her for a transformation no one saw coming. Leaving the ocean behind. Before she ever stepped in front of a television camera, Jane Kilcher, then Christina Jane Furman, had already carved out a life that was anything but ordinary. Jane gravitated toward the sea early on, eventually spending years working as a commercial fisherwoman. This career path demanded physical toughness, sharp instincts, and a deep understanding of Alaska's unpredictable coastal waters. Jane once described this period of her life as one spent surrounded by storms and men, a nod to both the treacherous nature of her work and the male-dominated industry she braved daily. From hauling in heavy nets to navigating icy swells, she developed the kind of resilience and hands-on survival skills that would later serve her well in an entirely different setting. Jane's life took a significant turn when she met Lee Kilcher, a fellow Alaskan with a shared love for music and the wild. The two bonded over melodies and mountain trails, and in 2006, they married. With that union, Jane made a bold decision. She left behind her career at sea and embraced the challenges of homesteading life alongside the Kilcher family. The move wasn't just geographical. It was a lifestyle transformation. Trading the motion of the ocean for the stillness of land required more than a change of scenery. It demanded a new mindset. For someone used to being constantly in motion, adapting to life rooted in one spot, dependent on the land rather than the tides, meant learning to thrive in an entirely different rhythm. Off-grid living on the Kilcher homestead was not so much an escape from hardship as it was an entirely new sort of hardship. Jane now had to learn the nuances of growing, harvesting, and preserving food in accordance with the seasons. Yet, being a former commercial fisherwoman was an edge that few other homesteaders in the area possessed. She became the fish supplier for her family, fishing sufficiently through the summers to provide food through the long and cruel Alaskan winters. Besides, she knew her way around a halibut, salmon, cod, and trout, considered the prized catch of southern Alaskan waters. Fishing became her lifeline. Year after year, she went out fishing, not just for sport, but for survival. Her duty for sure, and a tribute to her spirit. The very life on the homestead molded Jane in different ways, in fact. Her strength became a cornerstone of Kilcher life, and she quickly demonstrated that she could meet the demands of rural and off-grid living. Whether she was chopping firewood, hauling fish, or juggling weather patterns, Jane displayed a combination of grit and grace that captured the hearts of Alaska, the last frontier's audience. From stormy seas to a rugged land was her transition not just in a job, but also in a life within itself. A life that professed to be flexible and spoke loud about what it means to live intentionally in one of the world's harsher environments. The Kilcher Legacy. The Kilcher family stands as one of Alaska's most enduring symbols of self-reliance and tradition. Their homestead, founded in the 1940s by Swiss immigrant Yule Kilcher, spans over 600 acres of rugged Alaskan wilderness near Homer. Built on principles of endurance, sustainability, and harmony with nature, the Kilcher lifestyle predates their rise to television fame. Long before Alaska, the Last Frontier, brought their story to millions, the Kilchers had already earned local reverence for thriving in an environment where daily life is dictated by the land and weather, not convenience. The Kilcher's legacy extends beyond survival. It's a cultural inheritance rooted in both hard work and storytelling. Generations have passed down not just tools and skills, but values, living off the land, working as a family, and respecting the balance of nature. This reputation shaped their public identity well before the cameras rolled. In Homer, They were known not as performers, but as pioneers who lived what many only romanticize. Their story became a modern myth of what it means to live authentically in an increasingly disconnected world. Though she grew up nearby, becoming part of the Kilcher household meant embracing a lifestyle with its own rhythm and unspoken rules. The adjustment wasn't just logistical, it was cultural. Living among multiple generations and carrying the family name came with the weight of expectation, visibility, and the responsibility to uphold a way of life that had been carefully preserved across decades. Jane's integration into the Kilcher legacy wasn't passive. She carved out her place through resilience, personality, and an earnest embrace of the Homestead's demands. While she inherited the name, she earned the respect of those within and outside the family by showing that tradition isn't static, it evolves. Her presence added dimension to the legacy, blending modern perspective with long-standing values and helping ensure that the Kilcher story continues not just as a past to be admired, but a living heritage to be carried forward. Music and survival. When Jane and Atz Lee Kilcher first crossed paths, it wasn't just their shared Alaskan roots that brought them together. It was their mutual passion for music and the outdoors that truly ignited their bond. In a world often defined by isolation and raw survival, music became a source of joy and connection between them. Whether harmonizing in the quiet glow of a wood stove or strumming guitars by firelight, music offered a softer, more soulful layer to their rugged reality. For a couple living in such a remote corner of the world, their shared love for melody became both a romantic foundation and a form of self-expression, a rare, almost poetic contrast to the daily demands of hunting, harvesting, and hauling firewood. Building a life together on the Kilcher homestead wasn't about material gain or traditional comforts. It was about creating something sustainable, authentic, and rooted in family. Jane and Atz Lee took on the roles of both parents and partners in survival, not only raising their blended family but also contributing equally to the upkeep of the land and the rhythm of subsistence living. They worked side by side in physically grueling conditions, splitting logs, constructing shelters, fishing, and preparing for Alaska's notoriously harsh winters. This dynamic of shared labor and mutual respect became a pillar of their marriage and was a major part of what viewers admired about them as a couple. They weren't performing for the cameras, they were living a life that required constant collaboration and trust. Their story came alive for millions when it turned out to be Alaska, the last frontier, where their chemistry and compatibility made them fan favorites. The show let them see how they worked together, how they were resilient, and how highs and lows affected them as an off-grid household. Jane's quick wit and Atz Lee's quiet intensity created on-screen chemistry, giving the series a core torn by the adventure between the two characters. Unlike most reality TV couples who seem made for drama, Jane and Atz Lee's personalities came across as refreshingly real too, navigating the chaos of nature and the complexity of marriage with children in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth. Authenticity in itself struck a chord with fans waiting to catch a glimpse of how it survived through the stakes. However, there were unique challenges to the use of public display as a very special thing, which added to the life of the relationship. Fame has a way of widening cracks in the strongest of bonds, no matter how much effort went into the work. At the camera range, capturing every move and audience dissecting every word, Jane and Atz Lee had to find the balance between personal privacy and public curiosity. Though their share of criticism online, speculation in the media, and persistent attempts to create a near-perfect image of their relationship aren't easy to manage, they've managed. Over the years, they've remained candid about their times of ups and downs without shying away from affirming that their marriage and their lifestyle take effort, sacrifice, and sometimes reinvention to make it work. Ultimately, a musical, wild, and profoundly human saga stands as one of the finest legacies left by this series. Surviving the wild. Life on the Alaskan frontier is not for the faint of heart, and Jane Kilcher has proven time and again that she is more than capable of meeting its demands. The wilderness surrounding the Kilcher homestead is both breathtaking and brutal. Throughout her years on Alaska, the last frontier, Jane has faced conditions that most people would find unimaginable. From blizzards that threaten to trap the family in for weeks, to frostbite-inducing temperatures that challenge their ability to gather food and firewood, Jane has had to stay calm under intense pressure. One of the most harrowing moments documented on the show involved Jane navigating dangerously thin ice during an ice fishing trip, fully aware that one wrong step could plunge her into the frigid water below. These aren't dramatizations for TV, these are daily realities for those who choose to live off-grid in rural Alaska. But not all of Jane's brushes with danger were courtesy of nature. In 2014, she and Lee became involved in a controversy that placed them at the center of a legal storm. While filming an episode of the show, the couple participated in a bear hunt that involved using a helicopter, an act that is strictly prohibited under Alaska state law due to concerns about fair chase practices. The footage, which aired on national television, triggered an investigation by authorities and sparked public debate about ethical hunting and the influence of reality television on wilderness behavior. While the intention may have been to portray a rugged Alaskan experience, the legality of their actions quickly overshadowed the narrative. Serious were the legal ramifications. The hunting violations, initially misdemeanors, by Jane and Lee, soon gathered attention not only onto themselves, but also the production house responsible for the show. Eventually, there were no charges against Kilchers, but there was a consequence. Wilma TV, the production house of the show, paid a hefty fine of $17,500 to clear itself of the issue. This was after Jane and Lee cooperated with the authorities and stated that they would testify if necessary. Though no charges were pressed against them, it reminded that even those who live close to nature have to answer to the laws meant to protect it. For Jane, this was yet another tribulation for which she had to muster the power to succeed, not only physically, but more so emotionally and publicly.
The million-dollar question is,
Do you know what you're doing?
are the solar panels you're leaning on broken?
Through all these matters, destruction and courage have characterized her life on the homestead. The diva has remained quite unshakable, dealing with legal problems or heightened confrontations such as that of a bear. She would face the vast Alaskan terrain, making rigorous decisions most people would rather ignore. Her humility in acknowledging her mistakes speaks volumes about the strength of her character. Jane thrives in Alaska. In real terms, she portrays a picture of raw strength and adaptability. She is not only a reality star, but also the symbol of what survival is all about. Jane's life is a daily risk on the margins, perennially learning and doggedly applying the knowledge for the land that she calls home. But just as Jane proved she could survive the wild, fate delivered a sudden blow that would shake her world far beyond the wilderness, the fall that changed everything. In August 2015, Lee Kilcher's life took a devastating turn during what was supposed to be a routine hiking trip to the lodge at Otter Cove in Homer, Alaska. An experienced outdoorsman, Lee was no stranger to physical risks, having faced the harsh realities of frontier life for years. But nothing could have prepared him or his family for the sheer severity of this accident. While hiking along a remote trail, Lee fell from a significant height, resulting in life-threatening injuries that left both his future and his family's stability hanging in the balance. He was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, where doctors discovered he had suffered a broken arm, shoulder, ankle, and hip, along with crushed ribs and 2 punctured lungs. The recovery process was grueling and lasted an entire year. Lee was forced to step back from much of his physically demanding lifestyle and instead focus on rehabilitation and healing. The process was not only long, but intensely painful, physically and emotionally. As the cameras of Alaska, The Last Frontier began rolling for Season 8, Lee was just beginning to regain mobility. It was a vulnerable time, especially for someone who had built an identity around rugged independence. The accident challenged Lee in ways few could see from the outside, and it required an extraordinary level of support from those closest to him, particularly Jane. In the context of a caregiver, Jane Kilcher was filled with a quiet strength and a fierce resolve. The challenges that go with off-grid life were, for her, already comfortable experiences. In this case, she added nursing and becoming the emotional anchor. She was there for her husband through moments of maximum pain and dependency, skilled enough to attend to his medical needs while simultaneously addressing the daily needs of the homestead. Their relationship was put to the test. In addition to caring for Lee, Jane held on to normalcy for their blended family, all the while wondering whether they would ever return to that life. What she successfully carried through in those days showed their relationship in much more depth, not just to her husband, but to their life together. The emotional stress due to the accident has had profound and lasting consequences. Injury, recovery, and public scrutiny bore down heavily upon both Lee and Jane. In addition to the physical trauma, Otzi filed against the lodge at Otter Cove in 2017, claiming that poor signage contributed to his fall and demanding $100,000 in damages. Regardless of the outcome in court, the accident cracked the surface of a marriage that had remained largely shielded from public scrutiny. Caring for a loved one through such a harrowing experience can solidify the union or reveal latent cracks, and for Jane and Lee, it did just a bit of both. The fall broke bones, but also became a turning point, shaking the very foundations of their marriage and fortifying their transition into the agony and eventual transformation that lay ahead in the following years. Cracks in the ice. The once solid foundation of Jane and Lee Kilcher's marriage began to show signs of stress long before either of them confirmed it publicly. As the pressures of homesteading life, fame, and personal setbacks mounted, subtle cracks began to appear in their relationship. Fans of Alaska, The Last Frontier, accustomed to seeing the couple tackle challenges side by side, started noticing small shifts. Whether it was Jane appearing more frequently on screen without Lee, or the two taking on fewer joint projects, it became evident that something had changed in the dynamic. Although never dramatic in front of the camera, the emotional distance was increasingly difficult to ignore. Adding fuel to the fire were the long periods of separation that fans began to observe on social media. Jane would share photos from her travels or visits to the lower 48, often without any mention or appearance of Lee. At the same time, Lee was seen working on independent projects away from the homestead, such as constructing a remote cabin in the woods. While such individual pursuits were not unusual for the Kilchers, the lack of interaction between the couple raised questions. Comments on Jane's posts began to speculate on their relationship status, and she often remained silent, giving rise to even more rumors. Her absence from shared milestones or holidays that had once been jointly celebrated suggested that the emotional divide had grown too wide to ignore. Eventually, speculation gave way to confirmation. In 2023, a heartfelt yet direct post on Facebook, Jane publicly acknowledged that she and Lee were going through a divorce. She spoke with unfiltered honesty about the pain of separation, describing Lee not just as a husband, but as her best friend, someone whose absence she felt deeply despite the growing distance that had crept into their marriage. Her words struck a chord with fans who had admired their partnership and viewed them as a rare example of enduring love on reality television. Jane's openness about the breakup was both brave and vulnerable, offering a glimpse into the very personal loss that had unfolded behind the scenes while the cameras continued rolling. The emotional aftermath of the separation took a visible toll on Jane. In interviews and social media updates following that event, she touched on how moving forward had been a struggle for her in various aspects, emotionally, mentally, and physically. According to Jane, the split had affected her health, resulting in weight loss and extended periods spent deep in thought. She emphasized her self-committed healing, self-care, and family well-being. Through all of this, she kept a relationship with her audience, who responded in empathy and support. For many, he had turned his odes to the divorce story into one that serves as a backdrop for a recovered woman, re-strengthening her self-worth and identity under public scrutiny but private pain. Jane's personal tragedy. In recent years, Jane Kilcher has opened up about deeply personal struggles that have shaped her journey beyond the Homestead and television fame. One of the most heart-wrenching moments she shared publicly was the loss of her beloved dog, Willow, a longtime companion and source of comfort. The news was shared through a heartfelt Facebook post in which Jane expressed her grief and the profound bond she had developed with Willow over 12 years. The loss marked more than just the passing of a pet. It represented the end of an era filled with both joy and emotional support, particularly during some of the toughest chapters of her life. For someone who has always shown strength in the face of Alaska's natural challenges, this personal tragedy reminded fans that Jane is not immune to emotional pain. In addition to her loss, Jane has been transparent about the mental and emotional toll that years of stress, public scrutiny, and personal hardship have taken on her. She has spoken openly about battling depression, especially during and after her separation from Lee. Living a life so deeply embedded in the public eye, while also managing the intense demands of off-grid survival and family responsibility, proved to be a heavy burden. As her relationship unraveled and her role on the show evolved, Jane found herself navigating uncharted emotional territory. Depression, compounded by isolation and life changes, became an undercurrent in her story, one she didn't shy away from sharing, offering fans a real glimpse into the vulnerability behind her otherwise resilient persona. Certainly, the emotional stress began to take a toll on her physical health. As far as Jane was concerned, she believed that stress and sadness caused her to lose huge amounts of weight, approximately 25 pounds. She said the transformation wasn't totally on purpose. It was a result of a mix between emotional trauma and wanting to regain control of her life during very uncertain times. At one point, she referred to it as a revenge body, half joking and half serious, reflecting the duality of wanting to feel strong while healing from something painful. Her transformation triggered differing opinions online, with fans praising or expressing concern. Her appearance has become a double-edged sword of being a public persona. A new chapter. Off the screen. After over a decade on television, Alaska, The Last Frontier quietly wrapped up its long and impactful run, marking the end of an era not only for fans, but for Jane Kilcher herself. The series had become a staple for Discovery Channel audiences, drawing viewers into the lives of the Kilcher family as they navigated the demanding realities of off-grid life in Alaska. For Jane, the conclusion of the show meant stepping away from the national spotlight that had, for years, shaped how the world saw her. While the final season was never marked by a dramatic farewell, it was clear that both the family and the network were ready to close the chapter on a story that had already spanned over 10 seasons. With the end of the filming, Jane passed into a new phase of life, one which de-emphasized production schedules and public appearances, and instead focused more on her personal fulfillment and simplicity of living. With this painstakingly grueling episode of reality television behind her, she felt that a more proper distance from the limelight was in order so she could reconnect with those facets of Alaskan life that have always kept her grounded. Nowadays, she tweets in a somewhat more casual style and less frequently to keep her fans updated. Jane's new life lets her reconnect with her old world in a different way, focusing on the realities of homesteading that were never supposed to be broadcast. Quiet moments of solitude, chores done without fanfare, and the joy of living one's own life free from expectations of entertainment.
Jane may not be on television these days, but her passion for the land and lifestyle that first defined her remains at least as strong as ever. She still resides in Homer, Alaska, remaining connected to the intimate community she has always called home. From fishing to preserving food for winter, she has not budged from her commitment to sustainable living. In fact, the years spent out of the limelight have only solidified her resolve for privacy, tranquility, and personal well-being. Breaking away from television was not a retreat for Jane. It was a self-protective act aimed at preserving what really counts to her: family, self-sufficiency, and inner peace. Just when life seemed to quiet down, Jane surprised everyone with a bold new transformation that turned heads and sparked conversation. Reinvention and Resilience. In the aftermath of her divorce and the end of Alaska, the last frontier, Jane Kilcher has entered a transformative period marked by personal growth, empowerment, and resilience. No longer bound by her former roles as a wife, a cast member, or a supporting figure in a larger family narrative, Jane has reclaimed her independence and is embracing life on her own terms. One of the most visible signs of this new chapter has been her dramatic physical transformation. In a candid post, Jane revealed that she had lost 25 pounds, referring to the change with a mix of humor and honesty as her revenge body. While she acknowledged that stress and heartbreak had played a role in the process, she also emphasized that the transformation was about reclaiming her strength, physically and emotionally, after enduring years of public scrutiny and personal hardship. This transformation was more than skin deep. It went much deeper than that. Jane has said that her divorce gave her an excellent chance to confront suppressed feelings and reevaluate her identity. She stayed relevant by linking with her fans on social platforms rather than retreating into obscurity, sharing glimpses of her new routines, thoughts, and accomplishments. Everything from lighthearted selfies, fishing updates, and casual get-togethers to candid and intimate posts about grief, body image, and emotional healing has resonated with so many who appreciate her willingness to share. From tough topics, Jane speaks openly of the very complicated intersection of public expectation and private self-worth, giving solace to others who are imbuing their own lives with new meaning. Jane Kilcher's journey today is one of intentional reinvention. The intention is to neither recreate the past nor conform to outside expectations. Instead, with a generous dose of introspection, humor, and unwavering forthrightness, she is mapping a course for herself that is uniquely hers. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed diving into Jane Kilcher's incredible journey, don't forget to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories from the pulled side of life. And hey, don't stop here. Click on the next video showing on your screen for even more untold tales and behind-the-scenes moments. See you there.